Hello folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily TA wrap. When we take a look at these markets, we do it from a neoclassical perspective. Each day we ask ourselves, what happened today? What does it tell us about tomorrow? I do this show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of what is another snowy night in the Rocky Mountains. Folks, programming note, Thursday will not be a show, taking the evening off. I have a date and will not be around, and so no show on Thursday. So tonight, tomorrow night, and then we'll take a day off. Last night was kind of an abbreviated show because not much was happening. We were pretty much sideways hanging at the highs. Well, today was a little bit different. We'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at anything you want to look at, what time we have left. And we need to poke around and look at the overseas markets as well tonight. So let's start with the numbers here, and I'm starting with the sector page because I wanted to show you the kind of damage that happened. It really was about 0.5% or more across 6 of the 10 sectors that we watch. Bonds were catching a little bit of a bid, junk bonds as well, so money moving into safety, quote unquote. You see the XLP, XLV, right, XLU, and of course technology with Apple. So the leaders, so to speak, were the safety valves. They took it off the other side. Let's go look at the numbers here. It wasn't a horrible day, but it was 0.5% down pretty much across the board. Industrials were down. It looks like about 0.5%. 16,351 down 67.5. The S&Ps lost 0.5%, 9.5 points. 1867. They're kind of at a critical level here. If they don't hold this level, they can give up that extra 17, go back to 1850, which was a number that I had pointed out in one of the articles over here earlier this week. What else we got here? Composite, a little over 0.5%, 27.26 down, 0.63, 43.07. NDX was actually down the least because Apple was the strongest today. They lost, looks like 14, almost 15 points, and the Russell got it hit on the chin, down 1%, 13.5, 1187 was the close. Gold was up slightly. Oil was, I think oil was also up slightly today. We really didn't have that much happening in the commodity sector. We had gold up quite a bit, came down, and then bounced a little bit at the end. Oil was down as well. Dollar was flat. And silver, I believe, took it on the chin one more time, and silver just can't seem to find a bid. It was up and then finished either flat or slightly down. So that's pretty much it across the board. Let's go over to the markets here. So I'll start with the Russell, and the reason the Russell is the Russell's coming all the way back to test that low. So the Russell, if you remember, let's bring this up as kind of a recap because now we're kind of back at that same spot. There was a retest regen zone. A retest occurred here, and it barely held, and then of course that was the Russian scare, and then it was a big zap to the top side. Now you're coming back into the bottom of that number. That low was 1187.28. You got to 1187.05 on the close. So you got under it, you stayed under it slightly. Volume 339 versus 376. Yeah, so slightly less volume. You're back into what is now no longer a retest regen area but a support zone. Right, so the support zone is the green that you see here. You came into it, you closed just into it, so that support zone is going to reroute itself tonight. I'm guessing it's probably going to end up right about there. But you know, here's the test, folks. You go up, you're starting to come off, right? In other words, you had this great move up, right? It needed to consolidate. It is consolidating. It did not finish its move up, right? There's an ABCD structure there. There's another one inside that one that if it were to actualize, it would get you up to about the same spot, or actually a little bit less. But right now, it's about holding this little zone you're in up here, right, and moving back to the top side. And so the Russell comes off the hardest, test, back into the zone, support zone. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? It either does or it doesn't. If we move over to the S&Ps now, the S&Ps, they did the same thing as a recap. They came back, did a retest regen into this high, got underneath it, closed over it, right, and then regenerated higher. Now they're coming back in. And as they come back in, what is the S&P coming into? Well, it's coming into this bar, the top, 1867.92. That's the first place that you would expect to find some support. What does it do? It closes slightly underneath it, 33.9 into 39. So again, we're coming back. We don't have as much volume. The volume's either going to have to pick up or we're going to see this thing flip around and try to go back the other way. This is not a critical support area, although that is the top of a decent volume bar to the upside right after the breakout. The real bar is this bar. It's into the bar, right? And the key is going to be, does it hold? You know what I'm looking for, if I'm looking at this and saying, okay, what's happening? I want to know it's going to hold this higher range. I don't want to see it come back down into the next range down, right, which is down here. So S&P's still up there barely. IWM, Russell still up there barely. Let's go to the NASDAQ, the NDX. Now these guys have been the leaders all the way up, and they've been struggling. And the reason they're struggling is because they have been the leaders, right? They've been the farthest, they pushed the farthest and the fastest compared to everything else. As they come back, volume starts to expand today. So that low from yesterday, 3683.97. Today you got the 3681. So you get up underneath it, you got more volume. That to me looks like it's going to test again in the morning. Coming back into the top of the Russian scare, 3678. Looks to me like it is going to test into that bar tomorrow. And that would be kind of critical because, again, you got to think ranges here. You're still kind of up in the top range. If you give it up, you're going to come back and test into the next one, right? So in each case, Russell, NDX, SPX, they're all the same, right? They're all coming back. They're coming back to the bottom end of their range. They're a little bit lower, showing a little bit more volume here than you would like. Tells me they're probably going to test it again in the morning, and then we're going to see if they hold it or not. Because if they don't, then they're going to come back deeper, right? And that's going to be a pretty nasty little sell-off if it happens. Let's look at the Dow Jones. Okay, so Dow Jones really not doing anything, still holding that top area as well. Let's look at the NASDAQ. And the NASDAQ. Now the NASDAQ's even a little worse off, right? Because the NASDAQ looks like it's already given up that zone. So this is not a good sign, actually, right? You kind of got that little congestion consolidation area up there. It's already started to give it up. That means it's probably going to come back and test into this next one. Volume expands. Yeah, so if the NASDAQ, so when I look at all these, the NASDAQ is the only one kind of throwing a clue out here that we may break down tomorrow. Yeah, that's the way it looks. Let's go look at the sectors and see if there's anything there. Because they did sell off today. The question is how did they hold with respect to their particular chart? So let's flip through these each and see what they look like. Okay, starting with the transports. They got hit pretty hard today, but they're right up there at the top of the range, right? No volume. So that's actually not bad. Let's look at the semis. Now the semis, these guys have been on a tear. They were up again today and they finally gave it up. They still don't have any volume as they're coming back, at least not yet. So they're coming into this a larger volume bar. Really the semis, the test is going to be right here on this bar. Right? This is the bar that you're going to see the test on. So that's down. Let's get a price point on that guy. It is at 43.81. We're at 44.12 on the close. So that's about 1% lower. So the semis can trade down about 1%, and then that's going to be the big test, a little more than 1%. And they look like they are going to try to trade down some more. XLB came off pretty hard today, 1%. Now the XLB had broken out, and it's just coming back into the gap, still holding the range. So, you know, if you're watching these, they're all still up here in their ranges, right? So if I look at this one, you know, that range is still up here and it's still holding it. Now, the only place you got, you know, we start looking for volume, it's really on the retest regen back here, but I think it's already, did it test that retest already? 46.57, and I don't think it did. No, it missed it. So it would be a retest regen. That top is 46.57, which is about 70 cents lower. Yeah, 70 cents lower, which is 1.5%. So semis, this, if it comes back, this is still in the higher range though. It hasn't given it up yet. XLF was down about 0.5% today. They're just coming back to do the retest regen now. So when you're looking across at these sectors, they don't look that bad. So this may be one of those, you know, shake the trees kind of moves where they come back, they shake out the weaker longs, right, and then they, you know, take it down and take it up kind of stuff. And that's hard to stay with, if especially if you got in here recently, right? Because if you got any kind of size on recently, you're going to be taking some heat. 22.16, 22.21, that was going to come in right away. It's going to be within 6 bars, which means it probably can get to the bottom. 21.97, so that's another 1.5% here. So pretty much so far we're seeing 1.5% or so to get back to levels that should see support, or shall we say demand, come in. Let's look at the XLE. It was down the most today. It had never broken out, and it still didn't test that high volume high. So that still suggests it's going to try to test the bottom again, where you see that green support line. That is 86.62, and that's not very far. 0.5%. Really no volume today, even on the pullback. There was no volume in the market at all today, really, other than the NASDAQ, which probably was due to Apple. Let's see what Apple's volume looked like. Yeah, some of it in Apple, not a big part. How about the other three? So Google, a little bit of volume. Microsoft, these are the big three. So a little bit more volume in all of those. Yeah, so the NASDAQ still had more volume. XLI came off a little bit today too, but I believe it's still holding a higher range. It is. It's coming back to do its retest regen. That top is 52.50, 52.30, 52.32. It's at 52.33, and it actually got into it. So this one's coming back within 6 bars, right, which says it can get to the bottoms. And those bottoms are going to be probably about 0.5% lower, 51.92, about 40, yeah, a little less than 1% lower. So right across the board, as I go through these, they all look to be set up just about the same. Here's another one. This is the industrial. Actually, that is the industrials we just looked at. XLK. Let's see what this one did. The industrials had no volume. XLK, it's coming back in to test into these big bars. Still holding, not really holding a higher range, starting to give it up. So that one's looking a little weak. So I got 2 of them that are looking fairly weak. The rest of them are still holding the ranges and could come back to do their retest regens. And most of those are all about 1% to 1.5% lower. XLP still finding fun in the sun as everybody wants to move towards the safety line. XLU probably going to find some buyers here pretty soon, given its dividend and quote-unquote safety. XLV still holding, And that one does look like it will test those high volume lows again, but still it's in the higher range. XLY, now this one finally came off, and it's going to do a retest regen, or actually it's already started to. That high 66.85 to 66.55, and it's into it 3.5 back into 3.6 into 4.3. Doesn't have the volume. So this one's doing a successful retest regen so far. So when I look at the sectors, you know, the only clue we got on the index is the NASDAQ composite itself, the broader composite, saying it looks like it's going to try to trade lower tomorrow. And the Qs look like they want to test the NDX. Sector-wise, SOX and what was one other one looked like it wanted to trade lower, XLK, I believe. So we had a couple sectors. The rest of them actually still look good, but if they do want to trade down, they all can move about 1% to 1.5%. Fairly easy, right? And still be great buys with respect to where they're at. Let's look at the OX markets. And let's start with the dollar. Let's see what the dollar looks like. And then we'll move to the bonds, because the bonds actually pushed up a little bit. So the dollar can't get anything going. Still looks sick as a dog. Bonds can't get any kind of push going. That still looks pretty sick. Silver can't get anything going. Okay, JJC copper. Everybody's talking about copper. Folks, there's no strong correlation between copper and the rest of the market. So even though you see copper breaking down, and it broke the lows today on the weekly, right? So if I pull the weekly over, lows got broke today on the weekly, and it's multiples. That says that copper is going to try to trade even farther, right? And this is a nice little plunge going on here. But if you take the correlation between the copper and the S&P 500, short term or long term, it's just not there anymore. Used to be there, but it's not there anymore. So copper's selling down, but I don't know that it tells us anything. Gold is gold is hanging at the highs. You talk about hanging, man. This is hanging. These guys are gonna, if they hang here long enough, folks, if they can't take them back down, they're gonna take them up. And there's nothing here, but it's still hanging. Won't give it up. So in that, I believe, is a result of quote-unquote fear in the markets. I can't give it any other reasoning. GCC, which is the continuous commodities, started, I don't have great volumes here, but actually it's a nice track of what the commodities are doing. They've been on a tear and still looking pretty good. Let's see what the yen did after the Japanese central bank said they're going to keep flooding us. Well, it didn't help the yen go down, did it? So I'm assuming with the yen up, Tokyo's going to trade down tonight. I haven't had a chance to look yet. And that's about it. Let me go over to the world markets before I hit your questions, because I need to see what's happening over there. So let's grab, where are you? World markets. If I can find them, here we go. All right, let's start in Asia. So let's start with our friends in Australia. See what happened with Australia. Now they were popping back up. They made their highs. Remember, they came down. The buy was here. We talked about this when it was all happening. The buy was going to be into this big bar. That was the buy. Got you right back to the top, right? Pushed it. Let's see if they pushed it with volume or not. That was 9.6, 9.28. Did not. So that says it's going to come right back down here and test into the support zone again. I would think they get there probably soon. So Australia wants to trade down. And then let's take a look at our friends in Canada next. And they're just hanging. So Canada still looks like it wants to hang and go higher. I did look, while I'm on kind of the commodities, let's look at Brazil. Brazil started breaking down again. So Brazil breaks under multiple swing point lows on this time frame. And I still got to get these out of here. I keep forgetting about them. So we'll have to do that tonight. And let's see, BVSP on the weekly. It's going for the lows, folks. So Brazil is going to go test. This is pretty amazing, actually. Going to go test the lows on the weekly. That's from July of last year. Remember when we had the sell-off in July on the Fed scare? Well, Brazil's going to go all the way back down and test that. And let's see what the monthly looks like real quick. Going to test it. Wow. If Brazil breaks on this, right, then Brazil is going to actually, and it's going to be hard, right, because look, this is interesting. I hadn't looked at this on the monthly. As you're coming back, you have absolutely no volume. You're going to come in that high volume low on a weekly and a monthly, right? That's pretty high volume. That's going to be hard to break down. But what's amazing to me is you're going all the way back to 2009. Brazil is trading at 2009 levels. If we could pull Hong Kong up, I can't get Shanghai, but if I pull Hong Kong up, even though it's trading down right now, you can see a huge difference. Look at Hong Kong compared to Brazil. Big difference there. So let's pull back over here. Let's take a look at Hong Kong on a short-term time frame. So they traded down last night, so they gap down. I didn't get volumes today yet. So they got under that big volume low finally. So just like our market, it's kind of the moment of truth here tonight, probably. And we got a lot of numbers still coming out, economic numbers, but this is going to be the key area. You know, if Hong Kong can't hold this area, right, then Hong Kong's going to trade all the way back down here. And that's going to be a big move. So they're coming back to their key area. And they, right now, I can't tell because I didn't get volumes today, but it looks to me like they're going to try to hold here. Let's look at the rest of these. Let's go to, let me take the other couple in Asia and then flip over to Europe and then take your questions. Well, I see some quotes being put up here. Japan's down 1.6, Australia down 1. So I guess that answers that question. Okay, so Taipei, this is kind of chip country. This looks pretty positive, actually. You know, it's going to trade down some. You know, if you got Taipei, they're trading by now too. But this looks like it's going to trade down into the support area. Another, 60 points, 50, 60 points. But they love volume at the top. These guys are going to flip around and go right back up there probably. And let's look at one last one is Korea. Oh, and I should look at Japan. So Korea, really nothing there. They traded lower with volume, so they'll test again tonight probably. In Japan, we already saw Mr. McFeeters gave us, they're down 1.6 and 1%. Japan was down 1.6 tonight. So Japan's just trading back into the zone. Nothing there really. All right, let's go quickly. DAX was up today. We had industrial numbers. They were better than expected. Boy, they didn't close that much higher, though, did they? A little bit. But they couldn't stay up there, and they had no volume. That looks pretty sick, actually. FTSE. Well, the FTSE, yeah, and the FTSE's not doing anything. FTSE's trying to get back to the low around, what is that, 66? So 6,600 is where it's trying to get to. That's another 70, 80 down. And then let's look at the CACs. And on the CACs, yeah, it's kind of amazing because to me this is the worst economy over there, and it's still trading the best so far this year. So the CACs doesn't look that bad actually. All right, let's take a look at your questions, see what you got, see if I can maybe answer one or two. What do we got here? EEM is a question, and LTS, and MUB. Okay, so let's pop a look at these guys. So the EEM is the emerging markets. Question is does it break down more? Well, we just looked at Brazil. Brazil looks to trade lower. We looked at China. That one's kind of a toss-up with Hong Kong. Those are the two big ones in there. You got Russia and India as well. So does this look to trade lower? No, it doesn't. Looks like it found its low today. This looks to me like a good shot at trying to get a bounce tomorrow. You're coming into this area, right? This is where you have your volume, and you're coming back with nothing. And so, this, it's not pretty, but it does look like it's going to try to hold right here. Now, if it doesn't, right, then there's multiple levels here. If it doesn't hold here, the next level is there. Right, that's a pretty good one. And if that one doesn't hold, then you go to top of the high volume bar at the low. Now, you came off that high volume with more volume, so I don't really count that as a high volume low magnet like I usually do. But this is kind of a key area. This needs to hold here, because if it doesn't, this thing is going to trade down, another 60, 70 cents, which is another 1.5%, 2%. So tomorrow will kind of be the key test here. Tomorrow is shaping up as a key day, no matter what you're looking at. Here's just another example of it in terms of broad indexes. Do they hold here or not? It looks to me like this one will try to hold. I don't know if you're shorting it or trying to buy it. If you're trying to buy it, see if it holds. If you're trying to short it, I'd be careful and make sure it breaks before I do anything with it. LTS. Let's see here. So LTS, this is a financial services. These guys do, what do? They do brokerages, right? Brokerages and advisory service, investment banking kind of stuff. They got a nice big pop-up. This looks like a good area. Let me see the longer term chart here. So let's pop over to the weekly. Well, that doesn't look as positive now. And the reason for it is that high volume high, even though it's a high volume high, it actually traded back down, and this came into it, right, and didn't have nearly the volume comparatively, right? You see the difference on your weekly? And so that's what's turned this thing around, which means it's probably going to trade back down. Now it's going to trade into this zone. The bottom of it is the top of that bar. So if I'm looking at it on the weekly, that's 278. Okay, so let's go back to the daily now. So 278 on the daily, that is down here. And your volumes aren't great there, but they're okay. That's into this bar. Yeah, so I would make this trade right into this bar, right into this little area right here, and I'd make it hold it. And then if it does, that would be your buy, right? You have to risk back to here, really, to be reasonably safe. But you're shooting for the highs again. So it's not a bad reward risk. You can see why this got turned around, though, turned away. And then, of course, today the market was down. That gave it some more pressure to the downside. It looks like it will trade into here. See if it looks like it's going to hold. If it's going to hold, you get towards the end of the day, it's holding, then that may be the place to pull the trigger and try to get your trade on. And if you get a pop-up, right, if it actually does hold and pop back up, then you can bring your stops right up underneath it. Right? You don't have to give it hardly anything at that point. Okay? Let's see the next one here. Well, we got the Moonies, baby. So the municipal bonds. These guys were trading down. I got them on a daily. Boy, they had a lot of volume came out there, didn't it? A little bounce with nothing. Let's see what the weekly looks like. Yeah, so just like that last one we were just looking at with the financial, here you are coming into this big supply line, right? That supply line there is huge, right, off of this. So, don't expect this to just skyrocket here. It's gonna have to work sideways for a while. So It doesn't look bad, doesn't look great though. It looks to me like it's going to trade sideways. And the only question is, what's that range? That range kind of looks like this to me, right? That's where it's going to try to trade. One side break up, a break on one side or the other of that would kind of be the clue as to where the next larger move is going to be. Is it break upside or downside? Because either one can take it quite a ways, right? Upside would be up here, downside could be all the way down to here. So I would just monitor it if you're trying to trade it, or if you're using it as a proxy, it's not telling you anything. All right, well, looks like I'm out of time again. Thanks for the questions. I appreciate it. Also appreciate you being there. You tell a friend, tell two. I'm LA. This is and was your daily TA wrap. Tomorrow, critical day. All around the clock here. Most of the indexes. It's a question of, do they trade down another 1.5%, or do they hold here and go back and test the tops one more time? That's really what's in the balance. All right, folks. Have yourself a great night, and I'll see you next time. Until then, take care. Good night, folks.